Welcome.
To the joy of coding.
Hello, and welcome to episode 310 of The Joy of Coding. Hello, welcome. My name is Mike Conley. It's so good to have you. So good to see you. It's been a couple of weeks. Thanks for being here. I'm wearing a funny hat. I forgot if parts of it are green. I think I made this exact same mistake last time I wore this hat. I don't know if I can briefly disable the green screen so you can see it in all its glory. Hold on a second. Let me turn off the chroma. There. Yeah, that's the hat I'm wearing. This is a holiday hat for, it's the winter time, and I'm technically on holiday. That's right. Today is a day off, but because the last couple weeks I've skipped streaming, and because the last stream, 309, was a real bummer, particularly because of network issues, I didn't want to leave, I didn't want to end the year on that note. So I'm here. We're just going to have a nice, relaxed stream. Nothing too stressful. Thank you for the nice hat compliment, Smurf D. So good to hear from you. Let's get started. What are we doing today? What did I have in mind? Well, as usual, let's start with the agenda. It's December 21st, 2022. Nearly the end of the year. Episode 310. A reminder, no plan survives breakfast. Even though I kind of know what I want to do, it's possible the... So Alicad says I should keep the green background because it's Christmasier. It's more. Let me try it. Let's see if you like this better. If people find this distracting, then let me know. No plan survives breakfast. I think I know what I want to do today, but if it turns out that things go wrong with my network again, I apologize. It looks like things are okay for now. But, things could go sideways and we'll deal with it as we can. And if things go horribly wrong, I'll see you in the new year. The other thing I wanted to let you know is that the agenda that we're looking at is available to you. If you're watching this on Air Mozilla, it's in the details section. If on YouTube or diode.zone, it's in the video description down below. And on Twitch, down below on the channel details, there's some links both to the agenda and to this handy-dandy link for rating the episode. The agenda also links to the rate this episode. This is a nice way of communicating with me. After the episode's done, you can let me know what you thought. So, just an FYI. Also, there is an episode guide. The episode guide is completely viewer-driven. It's, viewers just like you can write notes, addenda, corrections about a particular episode, and that helps people who are watching the episodes know what happened in it and helps them navigate without having to necessarily watch the whole thing. So that's that. That's the preamble. What are we going to do today? Well, the first thing I wanted to talk about was some news that came out yesterday that I'm pretty excited about. You may have heard me talking about Mastodon and ActivityPub and the Fediverse. Each of those are almost like concentric circles within one another. You've got the Fediverse, and ActivityPub exists within the Fediverse, and within that there's an application called Mastodon. And Mozilla has just recently announced, if you follow the link to this blog post, with all the turmoil happening on the Twitter platform and Facebook kind of being not great, the idea of all of these places of communication, these hubs of communication being controlled by, wealthy tech companies, just individual, wealthy individuals or wealthy individual tech companies is not healthy. And so we've started to make some strides to investigate ways that Mozilla could participate in the wider Fediverse and try and improve things there. And for the folks who may be hearing this and going why not just focus on the browser? Remember that Mozilla's purpose isn't just to build browsers. Mozilla's purpose is to help make the web better. The Fediverse is part of the web. And we see all of the interest in Twitter alternatives like Mastodon, but also Pleroma, or there's one called Miskey. There are a couple of others. And, the sort of similar ActivityPub applications like PixelFed or, Microblog. And then there are other protocols that could be considered part of the Fediverse. I mean, Mail, SMTP, and IMAP. Those two, JMAP, that's another one. the diaspora I know Dennis is watching, Denshub is watching. I'll shout out diaspora. That I would consider also part of the Fediverse. These pods that communicate with one another. Federation, that's what it means when the servers communicate with one another, and that you're not, all kind of restricted to running on one particular server instance or like instance of an application. Anyways, Mozilla is interested in trying to improve the web in this space, especially because of all the attention that's starting to go there and the opportunity that suddenly a lot of people are going to dive in there. It's important that we make sure that people have the tools to do, like, participate in here safely, and to also have choice. And so Mozilla is starting to like investigate ways we can contribute there. To be clear, it's not like Mozilla is gonna like, hey, we're gonna take over the Fediverse. That's not the goal, and it's not also a goal to just be like a spammy corporate account spewing news into the Fediverse. It's like, what are ways we can actually help the infrastructure? Because ultimately, that's part of Mozilla's mission, is to help the infrastructure of things that run on the web. Improve the web, but not make it anonymous, private, and encrypted by default. Well, making it anonymous, private, and encrypted by default, we certainly helped make it encrypted by default by working on and with the, what are they called? The Let's Encrypt people. That was launched by a Mozillian, and I believe we donate to that. And, that's now its own thing, but we definitely keep close ties with the Let's Encrypt people. Private, yeah, we do care a lot about privacy. The tracking cookie protection stuff that we've shipped, I don't think I really need to defend our privacy record. Anonymous is tricky, right? Because along with anonymity, people will behave differently when they're anonymous. And so, there are balances to be struck. I will point out, we particularly like some of the moderation capabilities that a tool like Matrix has, federated moderation capabilities. And so we see that there's maybe room for improvement in the ActivityPub universe. And so that might be something we look at. Someone, if anyone happens to have kick powers, GreekOx978HZ is spamming the channel, so go ahead and kick them. All right, that's enough soapboxing about that, but I figured you might want to know about that. What I want to do today, I want to continue where we left off last week, very disappointedly left off, where we were working on the jump list stuff. We were getting, making good inroads, and then the network started to fall over. So I want to continue there. And then I wanted to save some time and do something kind of fun to celebrate the end of the year. I don't know if I've told you this, like the people on the stream may or may not know, who are watching this. I think some of you definitely know, because I know I see your names in the chat. I love point and click adventure games, particularly ones from the 90s. The Monkey Island, the Dig, the LucasArts era of point and click adventure games are I have a strong affinity for, but also the Quest games from Sierra. There was like Simon the Sorcerer, AdventureSoft. There was Revolution Software with Broken Sword and Beyond a Steel Sky, but Beneath a Steel Sky, and then Beyond a Steel Sky. So like that whole genre of games is very exciting to me, and it's why I got into computing. And one of the, who I would consider one of the founders or the primary movers in this whole genre of gaming, his name's Ron Gilbert. He was the person who created Monkey Island along with the team at LucasArts, but I think he was one of the primary creators. He also helped create the Scum engine, which is what's used to create a lot of LucasArts games, and is what Scum VM is a re-implementation of the Scum engine and a bunch of other engines so that they can continue to play those games. Those games can continue to have a life on modern hardware. Long story short, I've always been fascinated by the structure, the architecture of point-and-click adventure games, but and the way those tend to work is you've got like an engine, and then you've got assets, including scripts that are executed by that engine, and those scripts tend to be written in a custom language for an adventure game. And I've never had the opportunity to see a script from an adventure game. I've seen, engines that will run adventure games. Like Scum VM is open source. You can read the engine for Scum, the reimplementation of the engine, and see how it works. That's no problem. But the actual scripts that get compiled down into machine code that ultimately the engines interpret, this is something I've not really seen much of. There's been little hints of it here and there, and I'll go into that in more detail, but I wanted to look at a game that Ron Gilbert worked on, and he posted the scripts up on GitHub, which I thought was pretty fun. Yeah, Grim Fandango is a fantastic game. Big fan of that game. So I wanted to look at Dolores, which is some scripts for a game that Ron Gilbert posted on GitHub, and we'll look at that later. But let's start here with the jump list stuff. And the other thing I want to mention is I happened to get, just to celebrate the season, I'm not sponsored by Coca-Cola by any means. I've seen ads for this all over the place. This is vanilla Coca-Cola with coffee for some reason. I've never had this before. I'm just going to do a live react right now. I like coffee. I like Coca-Cola. I'm not a huge fan of vanilla Coke. I got this for free, so let's see how this goes. It's all right. It's all right. It's very syrupy, but that's Coke for you. All right. Let's, I think, yeah, the flavor is really syrupy. I get all I can taste the coffee, I can taste the vanilla, and I can taste the Cokes. They nailed those notes, but it is, it's very syrupy. Surprisingly low number of calories, only 70 calories in this can. What is going on? All right, let's get into this jump list stuff. I've been stalling because there's a build running in the background, but the good news is that this is the second of two builds that I did. It's the opt build. I have actually already done a debug build, and that's one I was hoping that both would be done, but we didn't get the debug build done, or the opt build done in time, so we can just use the debug build. That's okay, and that one's done. And I didn't actually check to see whether or not the build completed successfully. Let's do that real quick, because we got into a pretty funky state last week, and I don't know if I left it in a compilable state. So we got the toolkit, we started linking, and then we failed at the linking section, or we failed whenever we were building Jump List Builder. So we are currently broken. It looks like I left a slash. Oh yeah, I was pretty frustrated last week. The whole like responsiveness of my computer, or because I'm remoting into this machine and the network started to fall over, the responsiveness just like was garbage. Okay, so on line 130 of NSI Jump List Builder. Oh wait, hold on a second. That's a generated file. What are you talking about? Error, out of line definition. Populate jump list does not match any declaration in Mozilla Widget Jump List Builder. Did you mean populate jump list tasks? Ah, right. So I started to, what I'm going to say, I use a fancy word, bifurcate what we had originally defined as populate jump list into two particular sections. One that just takes a series of descriptions for tasks, and the other where we have like, you can have a custom section. In this case, we call it recent, and then you can like put other stuff, and then there's like the tasks section. And so I created the two interface points, and that's where we basically stopped. And so now we need to actually implement those. And I figure, where is populate jump list? It's here. We can probably populate jump list tasks. It just takes the descriptions, and that's the right signature for that. So we can say tasks. And then there's another one now called populate jump list. Was it custom? Populate jump list custom, which is the same signature except that it also takes a string, the description of the, or like the title of the section, right? Is that what we called it? The title, in a string title. And remind me again. So I can use the signature of set app user model ID for what it's supposed to look like. I often just out of laziness. So that, yeah, const reference, populate jump list custom. So we'll take a constant, we'll call that a title. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to return NSOK, and we're going to assert we're the main thread. And then we're going to see if this builds. So Grim Fandango is a great game. While we're waiting for this, I can talk a little bit more about my love of point-and-click adventure games. Grim Fandango is a great game. I played that when I was in like late grade school, early high school, because my computer wasn't very powerful when I was younger. I had friends who could do like 3D graphics, but I had a really old computer for a very long time. So I was stuck playing like the 2D adventure games for a long time, and just again and again and again. And let's see, Grim Fandango, what's there to say? So what's interesting about Grim Fandango is that all of the, it's kind of using a technique. I don't know if it pioneered it. It was certainly one of the only successful 3D point-and-click adventure games that I'm aware of. Successful, like it sold very well. It was a great story, well designed. The artwork was beautiful. The story was good. The puzzles were good. Don't want to ruin my blade. Is that what he's always saying? Don't want to mess with my blade. Yeah, what a great game. What was interesting about it is that it used pre-rendered backgrounds, static, well, not always static, pre-rendered backgrounds with some animating elements, with 3D characters and items embedded in that space. And so unlike a 2D point-and-click adventure game where you might have things like layers, and it's almost like paper dolls and layers, like 2D animation, right? Where you have to indicate that this thing is in the foreground, that's in the background, so a character walks in between. That gives you your sort of your layering order. With the 3D one, what they needed to do is like not only like occlusion for a 3D model in like on top of a 2D rendering of a background, so they had to like know where to clip it, but also because there's a camera that's positioned, they needed to know, okay, well, where is the camera in relation, like what is the angle of the camera related to the background? They had to make sure that worked. And then lighting and shadow, which is so interesting. I think that's really, really neat. I don't know if I'd call Monkey Island or Grim Fandango a point-and-click adventure game in the traditional sense, because as I recall, it was mainly keyboard-driven. Like, that was the easiest way to play it, was with the keyboard. I think you could play it with the mouse. Special shout-out for another 3D adventure game that I know is much maligned. I feel like a lot of people didn't like it. There are some great puzzles, but there's one famously awful puzzle. I think Old Man Murray, there's a blog that talks about this one particular puzzle that effectively killed the adventure game genre in the early 2000s. This is the game called Gabriel Knight 3, Blood of the Sacred, Blood of the Damned. It was from the Sierra series of sort of more adult point-and-click adventure games, which... it was so interesting. The very first one, of the Gabriel Knight series, was a traditional point-and-click 2D point-and-click adventure game, but it was very stylized. Jane Jensen, the creator of the Gabriel Knight series, who had also worked on a number of other adventure games, including a couple of King's Quests, I think, and she's also a talented writer. She's published books outside of these stories in the game, so she knows how to craft a story and a character and an arc and all those things, and she knows how to design puzzles. And so my understanding was that some of these bad puzzles in the third Gabriel Knight had to do with time, studio pressure and time. Like, they ran out of time, and they had to rush some things. There were certain things that they wanted to do that they couldn't do, and they had to cut some puzzles, and that changed how other puzzles could work, and so yada yada yada. And so they had to make a really brutal compromise for the cat mustache puzzle. That's what I'm talking about. The mustache puzzle in Gabriel Knight 3. That's the famous one. You can look that one up. But yeah, well, I'm killing time while I'm waiting for this part of the build to finish, because I figure whenever we got to the point where we were compiling the jump list builder before and we failed, there may have been some other stuff left to build, and so we're having to watch that. So hopefully this doesn't take too much longer, but I can use the opportunity to talk more about Gabriel Knight. So the first Gabriel Knight, let's look at some photos. First Gabriel Knight. Gabriel Knight 1. Very stylized. And, you know, a thinly veiled homage to a movie called, what was it called? Something Heart. It's got Mickey Rourke in it. Angel Heart, I think is what it's called. Angel Heart, a 1987. It's like a horror thriller. And the original 2D Gabriel Knight, it's dated. It's like the characters are dated. The whole vibe of how, you know, Grace in particular is treated, like how Gabriel treats women, is very dated. It's a very dated game. You know, it's kind of cornball in some ways, but there's some, you know, it's an item from its time. And the second Gabriel Knight was interesting because it leapt forward. It did not change, keep the same style. It used a full motion video. That was its approach. So while there was elements of like a character standing in a room and you could click and they could move, the characters were all filmed or photographed and then blitted into the like photoreal backgrounds. And then, you know, they could move around in this space to a limited degree. And there was a lot of full motion video, you know, and questionable quality. I know some people really, really enjoy this game. I've never actually completed it. You can still get these games on, I think, GOG, Good Old Games. I've watched Let's Plays of this, though, and I've actually visited the Ludwig Castle in Germany, Neuschwanstein. I visited the castle that's referenced in the game. And Gabriel Knight 3, the much maligned Gabriel Knight 3, which is when they decided to make the jump into 3D. I actually love this game. You know, the puzzles are obtuse at times. The interface is really bizarre. And you can see how they kind of like hemmed themselves in, or they painted themselves into a corner with it. How are we doing on this build? Almost there, gang. Almost there. We finished. We're like at the point where we're building the test utilities, so we're almost done, and then we can pick up the pace on this Windows jump list stuff. But with Gabriel Knight 3, the primary innovation that differentiated it from something like Grim Fandango was not that the 3D spaces were being actually rendered in real time as opposed to being pre-rendered. It was that you could move the camera in the space, almost like the camera was like another character, because you could like move it around. And if you didn't see something, so you could have these large spaces where stuff was happening, like this cafeteria, or like this is I think a winery in the game, or you're like in a large space like this. The character that you're controlling could stand in some place, but you could like roam around and look at stuff, and it's possible for you to miss things. Generally, these are not critical things, but you can miss out on information that really sort of helps enrich the story, and that there are pluses and minuses to that. But the creators of the game really kind of boxed themselves in, because it effectively meant that they had to create very sophisticated large 3D spaces in certain situations, and they couldn't mask any like animations or how they were designed because of the way that the camera was positioned. Like, because the camera could be in any position, the animations and the way things looked kind of had to look good from all angles, and I think that really slowed them down. But some neat puzzles. I like the story, even though it's a ripoff of the Holy Blood, Holy Grail. It's like if you ever read what was it, the Da Vinci Code. This game, which came out before the Da Vinci Code, you know, there are a lot of relationships between the two. Okay, we're done. Let's get moving. So we've got our function here that's actually not doing anything. And both of these are actually, I think, going to do much the same thing, which is to forward a bunch of information over to a utility class. And so what I might want to do is actually have a helper function that each of these call into, and have these be like the sort of the exposed entry points into a helper function. The helper function does the work of converting what's come in the Windows jump list shortcut descriptions, you know, converting those and getting those built and then sent over to the other thread. And then the function that actually populates the jump list, have that be, you know, just a single separate function. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to close out this function for now. And then we're going to create a new private method, not function. I should be more precise. And this, what will this return? This will return NSResult. Populate jump list. And then we're going to need to take a couple of arguments here. We're going to basically take all of these arguments. But we want to say explicitly whether or not the title should be used, whether or not this is a custom or the tasks jump list. And there are some constants in there. Tasks, custom. We can just reuse these maybe. So something like return populate jump list, and we'll say that's our doorbell. If you're hearing that, that's a custom doorbell, and I don't know who that would be, but I'm not going to answer it. I think M's answering that. Okay, we're going to just return populate jump list. Frodo, someone at the door. And we're gonna pass in the descriptions, the context, the promise, but also the mode. And the mode is jump list item, and it's gonna be, or jump list builder. This is just the tasks one, I believe. Tasks, jump list category tasks. And I think we have to access that with this. Right? Yeah. Oh, NSI jump list builder. Oh, my apologies. And let's pass in the empty string. I have to remember how to do the empty string nicely. Empty string. It's just going to be ignored. Can I just pass in null? Maybe I can just pass in null. That's maybe not the safest. Let's pass in the empty string. Null is usually a bad idea. Yeah, just empty string constructor. Okay, that's what I'll do. Null is usually a bad idea. And then At least null in C++ is usually a bad thing to do. Akra says maybe it's pizza delivery. No. Had pizza yesterday. Definitely didn't order more. Unless one of you did. Hopefully none of you have my address. And hopefully none of you have sent me pizza. Not that I don't appreciate you all. But if any of you had my address, I'd be pretty freaked out. Custom list. And then we'll pass in the title. Now, does that work? Will that build? Oh, yeah, we also need to accept. What is it? A short? Const short. Mode. Or type. I'll call it a type. Or category. And then we'll call this maybe the custom title. And now we need to define or put this in our header. We don't get this one for free. So we're going to put this in our header, jump list builder.h. ns result jump list bit populate the jump list const category string nst array js value js context. Is it gonna be happy with the promise? Promise. Let's see if it likes that. For folks who want to know how to have a custom doorbell, I'm going to let you in on something about my life. What we have is, why am I opening a private window? It's a well, I guess I'm just worried that if you see my like Amazon stuff, that's because I ordered this off of Amazon. I don't want you to see my address, that's for sure. Yeah, don't want you to see my postal code. So okay, this is what we have. If you're curious, if you want to have your own custom doorbell, you know, it doesn't have to just be the sound of like a chime or something. You can basically connect to it from your computer via USB and then upload a custom, you know, MP3. It's a wired doorbell. Takes batteries. The batteries in here last forever. These ones last about a year. The range is really good. It's only $54 Canadian. Is it privacy friendly? Yes. In that there are no connections to the internet. That was my other thing. It's not a smart device by any means. It's just using radio, as I understand it. Or, and I think it's like encrypted radio. Something along those lines. But definitely is not online. I do not have appliances that are on the internet. Read from that what you will. But I do not have appliances on the internet. Okay, how are we doing here? Oh, we need a semicolon. Okay, so picky. And then once we have this working, the next step, I keep choosing the wrong file. The next step is to pass that information along to do populate jump list. So we're gonna pass in not just the promise. We're also gonna pass in any title. Let's see if we can find an example of passing a string. Oh, we've already done this. There's another place where we passed a string. Here, yeah. You just pass an NS string. So we're gonna pass an NS string, a short, an NS string, such and such, and so we'll pass in a category and a custom title. Oh, and that's, oh, is that gonna work? New roundable method. We passed in the string before. The string was, yeah, constant SA string. We passed in the app user model. Yeah, it worked. Okay, should be fine. So we're gonna change the signature of this, which means we have to change the signature of this. We're gonna accept now a short. And const. What was the one that accepted the app user model ID was do set app user model ID, and it received a const NSA string. Okay. Yeah, that's the right idea. Const NSA string, a title, custom title. Okay, that needs some style applied to it. And then we again need to update our header. Hooray! So what did we just add? We just added these two. So we're gonna put this into here. And will this build? Few, says Smurfd. I'm not sure, is that a few because my stuff's not on the internet? I don't put my furnace on the internet? Or my dishwasher or my fridge? Yeah, I'm not no, thank you. The locks on my house or the security system? Yeah, I'm not putting any of that on the internet. Forget it. Security cameras? No way. No way. Understand your threat model, right? What is your what are your tolerances, risk tolerances for something like well, I mean, maybe the least harmful thing is like if the external service goes down. The machine that your internet connected thermostat talks to over the internet, like if it goes down, does it behave okay? If it goes away, does it behave okay? Does it periodically require firmware updates that will like stop it from functioning until those firmware updates arrive? And can you accidentally brick your thermostat? Like these are the things that you have to ask yourself for your risk tolerances, and that's like before you start even getting into like attackers. And I don't think anyone is particularly interested in attacking my thermostat, but why open the vulnerability of your home? Like the convenience of an internet connected thermostat is not worth it for opening my home up that way. Okay, so now we've got everything plumbed through. Nice. So now the next step is actually doing the building. Do the interesting stuff. We started to do that here. And we started to look at what we were doing before, where we were like making the distinction between the category type. Oh, it used int16t. Fine. If that's what we should be using, then that's what we'll do. short. I'll just build that in the background. I don't think that's a particularly risky thing to change to have made. And then I think I think there's a good reason for this, and I think it has to do with portability, to not necessarily just use short. I can't remember. But we can use that same the same mechanism here basically. So let's start looking at this and chipping away at the parts that we need and the parts that we don't. So let's get rid of or copy all of this to the clipboard, and then let's just dump this stuff in here. And let's see what we got. So first thing is we can get rid of this last return. Don't need that because we're going to resolve a promise instead of returning. What does this thing actually do? It took a lock on something called mmonitor, which we might actually still need to do while testing. Oh, yeah, we have the lock. We have the lock on it here. So we're good. And we have the mjump list manager here. So we did all of that already. And then at this point I think we'd already started to do this last week. And then we got into the interesting part where it's like, okay, what kind of categories are we talking about here? I mean, this ensure we can put up here. It's not really, well, it's not, I don't think we need that. We're going to say switch category. Is it one of these? Then we're going to create a collection. Now this we cannot do. So maybe instead of releasing the error handler here, if failed rv equals nserror unexpected return, build the list, get the items. So instead of, what is the length used for? We're going to iterate using more modern techniques here. So we're going to iterate our descriptions. And instead of getting at a jump list item, and we don't have separators, then it tries to create a shell link. And tries to do that using the IO thread. So presumably it's going to populate get shell link. And that's used both by add list to build as well as this other add list to build and then our re-implementation. So we can probably modify get shell link for our purposes because we're basically replacing add list to build. So get shell link, we're going to pass it our description. We're going to get if ns failed, let the error handler deal with this. We add the link. And then we create a P array. We query interface. Return. Then we add the user tasks. If succeeded, retval equals true. What's retval equal to otherwise? Like, what were we doing before? So this was happening on the main thread. And so it's expecting a return value of true or false, and we're expecting a promise. I guess we don't indicate what the promise resolves with. I guess we can resolve it with true or false. We can keep that semantics, those semantics, but like what is, we're basically saying whether or not we succeeded. I'm going to say if not succeeded. I'm going to say if failed. Return. Oh, and here's another one. Wait, where am I? Where am I? I'm in the wrong file. Or I'm in the wrong place. If succeeded, I'm going to say if failed. RV equals NS error unexpected. Or maybe NS error failure. That might be better. And then return. We also don't use frequent or recent anymore. So I'm going to remove those cases, and I'm going to instead of using a switch, I'm going to see like well, I don't mind having the switch actually, because then we can use the default. And then jump list category custom list. I think we can put this check over up here. Populate jump list tasks, or populate jump list custom if a title is empty, then return ns invalid arg. So it's got to be something's in the string. And then while we're in here, then we're gonna do the same thing. You know, how much of this could be reused, I wonder. We don't use separator. Type. Do we provide type? No. Have you ever considered using something like CLine ID for navigating the Firefox codebase that offers better autocomplete and refactoring support? No. I'm relatively happy with Sublime. I'm better with Sublime on my Mac OS actually. I feel clumsier when I'm using it on Windows, but I'm fine with using Sublime. Anytime I've used a full-blown IDE, I've never felt as effective, which I know might be a shock to some. Okay, so we're gonna build the list, and we don't use that anymore. We don't get the type. We don't support separators anymore. What's the difference between a shell link and a shell shortcut? Shell link. List item. Shell link. Versus get shell. What's the other one? Get shell link, get shell item. Shell items used to encapsulate links to things. We currently only support URI links. What? What's a get? When we build tasks, handler app item, we create a jump list shortcut. We only use shortcut. Do we ever use anything else? I think I know the answer to this. I think we only ever use shortcut, and that's why we've simplified it. We don't need to do any of these things. We never use link. So what we're using get shell link again. This is, I think, going to be the exact same thing. We don't need to do that. We if NS failed, return. Otherwise, we're going to add that to the collection. Now, what do we do with the title? Where's the title come into play? If this is as similar as I think it is, like so far this is coming across as pretty similar. We iterate the descriptions, the shell link. See if it's failed, then we add the object. We can just reuse that same thing. P-array, get the collection, make sure we can do that. We append the category and we read in, so we use append category instead of add user tasks. That's the difference. So I think we can actually here, get rid of the old icons. Delete all favicons from disk. Huh. I wonder what that is all about. I got a feeling that tonight's gonna be. But if we compare these two things, they're very similar. We get the collection, object array, make sure it passes. And then this is the real difference. We use append category versus add user tasks. Otherwise, we make sure it succeeds. And then we also do this in the event that we were adding the custom list. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to say, instead of switching on that, we're going to say if a category equals tasks. I'm going to get rid of that switch statement in a second. Else. Let's be explicit. Uh-oh. What kind of... I'm gonna say... Yeah, add the tasks. Otherwise, that's all the same. Although the techniques are slightly different. I think that's an old school way of doing it. We're going to add the tasks instead. We'll do it this way. A category equals SI jump list builder jump list category custom list. Oh, final tea delivery of the year. Thank you so much, mysterious benefactor. Delicious. That on top of the vanilla coffee Coca-Cola, and everything's coming up, Mike. All right. Sorry, I missed some chat. Also, the fact that you were so intimately familiar with Codebase so that you know where everything is or have an idea where to look for it. I mean, I am somewhat, yeah, I'd say I'm familiar with the Codebase, but I'm much the power that I have really is the power of research, the power of using SearchFox and this is gonna sound bad, cargo culting my way to success, but also like trying to read what it is that I'm copying from other examples and understanding how those examples work. That is, I think, the power. You know, we could probably do this check earlier. This should be an enum. Can we have enums inside of WebIDL? CEnum. Yeah. CEnum. I don't know really what the difference is between CEnum and but CEnum seems to be the one that we want. So we're gonna define whoops, we're gonna use these instead. I think this is safer. Instead of just willy-nilly throwing numbers around. And yes, it means we can eventually get rid of these things, these items. We can get rid of the categories, and that's fine. I'm happy with that. We're gonna CEnum, and we're gonna call it jump list category type, and we'll say category type tasks and custom. And then how are these used? Remote worker type. So it ends up just being okay. So then we can update these to be const NSI jump list builder jump list category type Also here. Change. That shouldn't have been short anyways. And then we're going to say jump list category type. And then our remote worker types. Remote worker type service. I see. I see. So I can just use category I'll call it category tasks. And category custom. And then we have to change and the reason I did that, if you're curious, is now our compiler is going to enforce that whatever's being passed in here is one of those two. So we don't have to check whether or not we got a different one. The compiler will enforce. It won't allow us to pass any other kind in here. So now we can just say like, okay, are you one or the other? Maybe this is clearer. I don't know. I always like to brace. That, and then this only happened. When did this happen before? It only happened in the event that we're doing the custom list. So I'm not entirely certain why we're doing that. I might want to look into that, but we'll put that in here. Then I think we can get rid of this entire enclosing switch statement. And just start bringing all this back. And that, I think, does the job. Does it build? Noyane Rain asks, hey all, hey Mike, how are we doing today? We're doing pretty good. It's the last stream. It's the last stream of the year of 2022. I'm so happy to have you here, Noyane Rain. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Let's get this to compile. It'd be really oh yeah. Well, I have to update get shell link. You know what I'll do? because I don't want to have to like. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy this and put it in here for now. I'll call it jump list builder. Get shell link, and it will take a single Windows jump list description. Item const, and then that's an out param, and then an IO thread. Okay. Jump list item.h. Get shell link. What's that? I see. Jump list item.h. Yeah, okay. We're going to put that for now on jumplistbuilder.h. And it will take okay. Item. Now instead of what types were we always using? Items. Just shortcut. There was no type. Yeah, we assume it's a type shortcut. We're not going to use XPCOM for this. Shortcut get app, handler app. What? That's, if as I recall correctly, that's just to get the strings out. We don't need that. We don't need that. We're going to create a shell link. Return NS error unexpected. Retrieve the app path. We'll get the executable handler app, get executable, and then get the path. Well, we have the path as a string already. App path in this case is an NS auto string. So we can get that off of the description path, I think. Now what's it going to be used for? App path. Oh, I see. Like we don't need to do that. The title, description, the app arcs. We don't need to do all this work to extract all of those things because we already have them in the right formats. The command parameters, don't need to do that. The name, the description, the icon index is going to be icon URI get favicon. Shortcut. Page URI. We've already got it. Use icon URI. That's presuming that there's something in icon path. So it's like here, I think we can just put that all the way. Okay. If app title.length, app title, what's the, I think that's, title was from where? App title came from the name of the handler. Did we miss an argument that we need here? The title of the app. The name and then the description. Handler app's name. What is the handler app's name? What? Hang on. What is handler app? Handler app is a local handler app. What is the name? Handler app. A human readable name for the handler. And then a description. I think we forgot something. I think we need that. I think we need the name. What have we been using up until now? Item app. Shortcut. The name. The name is the task title. Yeah, we're missing something pretty important. Task name, or the task title. Required DOM string title. We need that. Okay, you know what? It's 2:15. Oh, Noya. It's just Noya. Okay, nice to meet you. I'm going to pause there. We're making good progress. We don't have something that builds right now. I'm going to commit what I've got. And I'm not going to touch it until the new year. I did want to take a second to look at Dolores as our sort of like end of year treat. So we stopped here. This is Mike, if you're watching this in 2023 and you're trying to figure out where to pick up, we were inside of Get Shell Link. We're trying to construct the thing that's actually going to go into like basically the Win32 MS COM thing that needs to be created. And we realized that that we need to supply a name, that we need to supply a title rather for a shortcut. The title, the path, and then the description. Not just the description isn't enough. The description is separate. You need the title as well. So task title, and like the title will be like open a new window. The description will be, hey, this is how you open a new window. We need those things. Okay, so let's let that build in the background. We'll come back to it in the new year. I won't touch it until then. Let's look at Dolores. Let us look at Dolores. So, what did we get to? I think we got to, I think that's fine. We started getting to tasks. We're almost almost there. And we're like in the process of this. Haven't figured this part out yet. That's going to be interesting. That's worth thinking about maybe next year. Yes. We're getting close, gang. All right, Dolores, not the DeLorean. This isn't about Back to the Future. So if you're not familiar with Dolores, so Ron Gilbert and his company produced a new adventure game engine for a game called Thimbleweed Park. Thimbleweed Park is a pretty good adventure game. Like it's aesthetically very similar to something like a Monkey Island or a Maniac Mansion. Actually, it's more in the vein of like a Maniac Mansion. Let's look at the style of it. For example, Thimbleweed Park was released a few years ago. It's a classic point-and-click adventure game. And Ron Gilbert and his team developed a whole new engine for it. You can actually read about the development of that engine on his blog, because this was all part of like a Kickstarter, I think. Grumpy Gamer is Ron Gilbert's name. Is like that's his screen name. Grumpy Gamer blog is where he writes about how he makes this stuff. And he talked about a language where let's see, why did during the pandemic, how to make your own game engine. I want to show like scripting. Engine. So scripting language. Yeah, he's starting to build the engine. It uses SDL. And then he started looking at Lua. He's not a fan of Lua, so he started looking at Squirrel. Squirrel is what ultimately they ended up using for Thimbleweed Park. That's not what they used for Dolores. They invented their own. His team invented their own language. But yeah, where can we find an example of some scripting? Scripting test. So in this video, you can see the game engine doing something relatively simple, which is just moving these sprites around. But each one of these is a discrete task. One of the things that Ron Gilbert seems to really like is making it super easy to like spin out a virtual thread, I think, to do a thing. And this is Squirrel. This is the script that was used to create this demo. And so the Squirrel language, which you might not be familiar with, Squirrel Lang. Oh, okay, not secure. Looks like this. It's got classes. It's got object orientation. It might look somewhat familiar. That's what they used for Thimbleweed Park. Well, instead of reusing the engine for Thimbleweed Park, Ron Gilbert, who this year his team released a new Monkey Island game, Return to Monkey Island. While that was still under wraps, he wasn't talking about it. He started to develop a new game engine for Return to Monkey Island. And he was like learning from what he'd done with Squirrel and with Thimbleweed Park. He's like, okay, we're going to start over. I'm going to create a new engine. It's a very expensive thing to do, but Ron Gilbert knows how to make game engines. He built Scum, multiple versions of Scum. He's an expert at this. He's been doing it for a long time, him and his team. And then he couldn't talk about Return to Monkey Island until like the sort of the announcement date, particularly because I think of licensing issues. I think Disney owns the IP. But what he did was, in order to test the game, or like to test the game engine that he was building for Monkey Island, he built a small game with it using the assets from Thimbleweed Park, and he released that game for free on Steam. You can actually go play this. It's basically just a fine, like you control a character named Dolores. You walk around and you just pick up things. You just like collect items. You just like pick up specks of dust, effectively. Dolores game. Ron Gilbert. Let's look at the Steam page. It's a free prototype using found art from Thimbleweed Park. So there's no voice acting, but it's got text. I don't think she's picking up dust. Oh, she's taking photos of things. She has to like go around and take photos. So it's using like much of the same artwork. There's no real puzzles. It's just like collecting photos of stuff. And the script for that game is open source. It's right here. And so I wanted to quickly dive in and see how it worked. Have I played through Return to Monkey Island yet? No, not yet. I'm waiting until the holidays, which I'm on. But I'm also waiting until I've got some free time during the holidays to play it and really, really enjoy it. I like to play it with several people. Like we're going to sit down, we're going to play it together. So how does Dolores work? We don't have the engine, but we have this folder structure. And if you think of, there's a relationship here between Gecko and Firefox and the engine. Dinky is the name of the engine. And the scripts here, the game for Dolores. That's the same relationship, I think. Gecko and Firefox, Dinky and Dolores. And this is Dolores. So you can think of this as like the browser folder in the Firefox, in the Mozilla Central code base. It doesn't have all of the like platform support. It just has the like Firefox code. And so we can start to infer some things. The one thing that, I mean, there's something called source, which is particularly interesting. Rooms. I have a feeling these are actually, this is artwork. These are Photoshop files. So I don't think that's what I'm particularly interested. I'm particularly interested in the source code, or not the source code, the scripts. These are like assets, but I think the scripts are where like the real magic happens. But I'm not sure what Wimpy is. Oh, I think I do know what Wimpy is. So in the long history of games made by Ron Gilbert, he'll like have kind of bizarre names for various subsystems within the engine. Scum was, I think, a part of a suite. There were a suite of tools. There's one called Spew and Scum and what was the other one? Spew, Scum. There were a whole bunch of them. Bile, like there were all of these sort of like mucusy names for things. Well, this one, the engine's called Dinky. Wimpy is, I believe, the file format that he uses to describe the rooms. And that's like a classic primitive in point-and-click adventure games, is like you can think of each individual space as a room, and the room might actually be outdoors. You know, you might be walking around, but you will transition from one space to another, either by going through a door or reaching the edge of the room, and then you go to another room. And each of these is a definition of those rooms. It's not the logic. This is like presentational information. So for example, there's a room called the diner. And what do we have in here? There's a lot of stuff I don't want to go into too much, but like it talks about the ambient light levels. I'm not entirely certain what these values mean, but it talks about the height of the background, presumably, and there's a string name, the scaling factor for the room. So maybe it's possible that, the room is actually a very zoomed out, like, image of, I don't know, a valley, and so everything's really, all the characters are scaled down. I suspect that's what room scales for. The dimensions of the room, I don't know what the difference is between height and room size. Height, room scale, I'm not entirely sure. And then sheet, I wonder if that's like an identifier for like assets. There's a named asset sheet, so you can use that. And then there's a description of some layers, these front to back layers using Z index. That must be the Z index. I guess, yeah, negative numbers are closer to the user, to the camera, and higher numbers are behind. So the sky is all the way behind, and there's like a parallax value there, which is pretty interesting. So like as the camera moves, there will be like a parallax multiplier for how things kind of move in relation to one another. Looks like Dinky has lighting, individual areas for lighting, so it'll light up or shade the sprites as they move into and out of various zones, and it describes various regions. I suspect that these are not created by hand, by the way. I suspect this is the output from a tool, some kind of like authoring tool, because I would find it pretty maddening to create these sorts of things by hand, but who knows, maybe that's what's going on. But I suspect, based on what I know about how like Scum games worked, is that there is a tool for creating these files, and then a description of like objects that can exist within this space: flies, a door, a hot dog, animate, and the like describes where they are, what hotspot to use, which is interesting because it's like I don't see how that relates to the position. And then, oh, I know what use position is. If you are the if the actor, the character that you're playing is going to use an item or interact with it, this describes where the actor needs to go in order to use the item, and maybe in relationship to where the item is positioned. Like this is where the actor needs to go. I'm not entirely certain about hotspot. Yeah, some descriptions of animations. These are names of individual frames, I guess, to go through. So we've got a bunch of objects in here. So that's how you describe a room. Some bounds. Again, the room size, which is like distinct from room size over here. I don't know why. There's a little bit of redundancy or duplication in here. I wonder what that's all about. And then walk boxes are really interesting because this declares where these are polygons that the user can walk within. It describes polygons that the actor or maybe even characters can walk within those bounds. Oh, Dinky is also an island in Monkey Island. Very good point. That's a real... I never made that connection. And I think there was also an island called Wimpy Island. I never made that connection. Smurf D. Brilliant. That's some brilliance right there. Good call. So he was kind of telegraphing that this might be related to Monkey Island just by the naming of the files in the engine. Okay, I think the real juice is in the scripts though. Like, I think this is all of the logic, not just the logic for the individual rooms, the logic for the game. Like, when the game executes, it's not executing a bunch of like native engine code to get you to a room. It delegates, I think, a ton of the logic for setting up and doing stuff and booting up and showing you the start menu and like all these things. It delegates that to these scripts, these Dinky scripts. So let's take a look at boot. I have a feeling, based on what I know about how Scum worked, because I happened to have read some documents on how Scum worked, that boot is probably like the main entry point. I suspect this is like the main. Int main. How does it work? So it looks like a bunch of asset folders are made available. And then a bunch of other scripts are imported. Presumably these just define a bunch of stuff. I don't know how many of them do things right away. Settings, for example, what would that do? So these things are like, oh, get user pref. That sounds familiar. It looks like there are like Boolean values of no and yes. There are functions, and then this is how you can set variables, I guess. And these are default values. Get debug setting, and then write into these debug values. And then there's something called settings. I don't know what the difference is between a setting and a debug, but maybe that's how you access them. This is how you like differentiate. So there's like, if I wanted to access this value, maybe you have to use setting gibber. On refresh prefs. It's so interesting how like there's familiar vocabulary here. Prefs, set user pref, on refresh prefs, and then yeah, double slashes to add comments. Okay, so in Boot we import a bunch of scripts. Yaks, as I understand, define yaks are like descriptions for how people talk in the game. Like this is like dialogue. I remember reading a blog post about how these are done. I believe like these are um, scripts for dialogues going on. Right here, you just did it again. Ahoo, yak, ahoo counter equals 1, show once. I think these are like dialogue trees. Maybe that's what the yaks files are for. Like anytime you're having a conversation, this defines the dialogue tree that you're having with people. And like there's logic in here. So for example, 1111. I don't know what the first number means, but that's how you exit a dialogue. Sheriff wants to see you again. Asked for coroner time. Let's wait for coroner. Sheriff. Really? Miahu? That's exciting. Wait for coroner. So sheriff. So it goes to, like, you can pass it into different routines. Sheriff. And you can maybe pass in wait for the coroner. So the coroner says this. We wait for that. And then we enter here. And then we script some things like we fast walk the coroner. We turn on fast walking. We walk the coroner to a location. We yield back to the event loop for some amount of time. Looks like half a second. And then the actor, Dolores, turns to the left. Oh, and throughout all of this, input has been turned off. So we've turned off like the user input. That's interesting. Break while walking, coroner. So the act fast walk to. So presumably it's possible that the coroner has not yet reached the door. And so we will yield until the coroner, I think, completes reaching the door. And then actor at coroner, sheriff's office. Maybe we move this. I don't know what it means. Because where are we right now? Actor at coroner, sheriff's office. We're in the coroner's office, presumably. Maybe this is like do a transition to another room or like a screen real quick in the sheriff's office. We turn off fast walk. We play the sound that the door opened. Actor at coroner, sheriff's office. At the coroner spot. We move the coroner in the sheriff's office to the coroner spot. And then we turn off fast walk. We play a sound. The door opens. We wait. The door closes. Coroner time. I don't know what that means, but that's very interesting. Asked for coroner time. He wants to see you. Told coroner time is game time. Asked for coroner time. Maybe they're asking for the time. Like, what's the time? Not really. Still have a job. Hi, coroner. Asked for coroner time. Okay, so these are like dialogue choices that you can make. Coroner equals investigates deaths. That's right. That's correct. What else does booting do? Like if that's what yaks are, we load all those up. We define yaks. Translation helpers, actor helpers, yak helpers. We add some special console buttons. That's interesting. These look like debug tools, trace threads, and inventory. That's very interesting. And then we set, I believe these must be like global functions. That's not doing anything. But if the user ever presses I and the inventory is showing, that will collapse the inventory. Otherwise, we'll expand the inventory. All right. Name must remain the same so the engine can read it. Setting the debug scenario list is opening. Nick with camera, bathroom power. Okay. The debug scenario list is this collection of strings. We set a local variable here of what the last font was. All right, here's main, and maybe it just knows to call main inside of like a main.cpp. There's going to be a main function in, like the engine knows to just do that. And so it calls into main, defines the rooms, the actors, the yaks, figures out the user language preference, rolls the dice and figures out a random number and stores that for, you know, a seed for random number generation. I guess this is like debug messages, loads a font, sets who the selected actor is that the user is going to control. I don't know what note create stories is. We turn on user input. We show the gear icon. If we're debugging, then we check to see what scenario we're in. Interesting. Do opening if we're debugging. So there's like ways you can skip over certain things, like skipping the intro. Otherwise, we go into start screen, start screen. Where's that? Start screen? Yeah, here. Script, do opening. Start screen, define room. So this is interesting. Some local variables here. Some helpful room functions. Show ref card. I don't know what that means. Color. Object state ref card show overlay color none is setting scene opening break by 5 seconds. Click to continue. Ref card. I don't know what that means. But we play the start screen music. Black. Show the ref card. Maybe the opening. Let's watch the opening of Dolores if we can, real quick. I'm gonna wrap this up in just a second, but I'm gonna see if I can find a Let's Play Dolores. And we're gonna just see what the beginning intro looks like. What is this ref card? I'm gonna mute. Are these the ref cards? Reference cards? So like when you start the game, this person might be talking.
Amanda.
Yeah, okay. Forward. These might be the reference card. Yeah, Mac Windows reference card. So that's what it's talking about. It's like, we're going to show the reference cards. We're going to wait, and then we're going to play the music. We're going to maybe color 2, color none. So what does it do? Like, it's going to wait a couple of seconds. Oh, it's flashing this on and off. And I wonder if that's what this is. Show Yeah, show and then default. That's what it's doing. It's flipping back and forth between these two documents. The one that shows and click to continue and just enjoy. That's what it's flipping back and forth between here. So that's like one script that's running on its own. And then it starts that as a thread. This is very similar to what I've seen from Scum, by the way. Like the scripting, the terminology, a lot of the structure and style of the language feels very much like the Scum scripting language the chunks of it that I've seen, anyways. And if you're curious, if you want to see a chunk of the actual Monkey Island source code, there is a talk that someone did, Ron Gilbert interview Game Archive Museum. So these people, An Evening with Ron Gilbert by the Video Game History Foundation. It's not a 5-hour video, don't worry. There's just a lot of waiting for the stream to start. But eventually, a discussion happens between Ron Gilbert and one of the founders, maybe the lead behind the Video Game History Foundation. And I guess this person and Ron sent him the code for Monkey Island, and he was able to compile it locally and make changes while Ron Gilbert watched. And so this is actual source code for Monkey Island 1. And it's not exactly like the Dinky source code, but it's very similar. And you can see some of the, like, he does some writing and changing of the source code. And you can see some of the tools that they use. These were like the utilities for creating different rooms. Copy crap. I'm guessing that might be the copy protection for Monkey Island 1. And then there's like a sprite editor, an animation tool, the room definition tool. I thought this was like really, really cool. I'm going to put a link to this talk here. What's the name of the interviewer? Ron Gilbert, Frank Cifaldi, Video Game History Foundation. It's a non-profit. You can donate to them if you want to help them preserve. Frank Cifaldi from the Video Game History Foundation talks to Ron Gilbert about Monkey Island and shows off some of the source code and tools used to make the game work. And I'll put a link there in the agenda. There you go. I highly recommend watching this. I watched this. This happened 2 years ago, so it was like the pandemic, and I was like the heart of the lockdowns, and I was very happy that I could like watch this during that time. So yeah, that's how the start screen works. I'm not going to do much more. I'm going to end the stream in just a second, but after this, where does it go? Like at some point, the user like clicks, and yeah, continue on options, not options showing. Then we're going to do opening. And what is do opening? Do opening is we're going to stop some sound. We're going to turn input on. We have a cutscene here. So there's like, that's an actual primitive in the language, or maybe it's a function. I'm not sure. And I don't know what the ampersand, the at means, but maybe this is like a coroutine. Maybe these run in parallel. I don't know. But if we're not skipping the intro, then like we paint out the screen, we wait 2 seconds, we show the titles, and we wait for this subscript to run, and then we start the music for town. We move the user to a particular spot. We say that the camera is going to follow Dolores. We start a conversation between Dolores and Natalie, and that's presumably the name of the conversation. We wait while that conversation occurs. Then we have Dolores pick up an item. We show the inventory. The user, and then we say, yes, the user has seen the opening. And then we show the gear icon. Also, maybe this happens after that. Then we color none. The door is closed. Dolores is at the nickel at her talks, or at the Natalie talk spot. The camera's going to follow Dolores. We pick up the inventory assignment. So maybe this is a different opening. Maybe if cutscene. I don't know what the difference is between these two. If we skip intro, expand inventory, actor turn to Dolores. If not skip intro, then Natalie says you need to turn in some number of more photos before returning your game developer job at Mucus Phlegm. So maybe the start. I don't know what the difference is. I don't know what cutscene. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, gang, but this is pretty neat. And I think you can actually download the engine separately. You can get a copy of the game engine, dev build for Windows and Mac. Sorry, not for Linux. They don't have any source code available for the actual engine. But then you extract the engine and then run it once and get an error, and then find the prefs JSON file that was created, and then give it the path to where you've cloned the scripts here, and then run the executable again, and the game should start. And then you could like start we could learn actually the language just by well, maybe there are help docs here. Oh my goodness, there are help docs. Not really. Oh boy. There are some documents, but not much. TBD. Not amazing, but we could maybe infer a lot by. Oh, this is a little more expanded. Cutscenes. Here, all right. Let's do this last thing before we call it a day. Let's just read what this is. TBD, start cutscene. Called right before the cutscene code is called. This function is responsible for changing the input state and pausing any global threads. It is very important that the input state stack matches when the cutscene ends. You can turn the cursor input on and off during the cutscene, but if you do an input push, be sure you do a matching input pop before the end. Starting a yak conversation in a cutscene is okay, but it needs to end before the cutscene ends. If a cutscene is started in a yak conversation, the yak conversation will abruptly end. If an override is triggered during a yak conversation in a cutscene, the yak will abruptly end. End cutscene. Called after the cutscene code has been stopped. This function is responsible for changing the input state and unpausing any global threads and returning the camera and resetting any UI. Starts cutscene with... So here's what we were curious about before. If a cutscene is started from within a start yak, the yak will immediately end with no error. Yak conversations can start in a cutscene. So I don't know what this is saying. If an override is triggered during a yak conversation in a cutscene, the yak will be killed. Within a start yak. This starts a cutscene with an option override function. Not clear. But, you know, you could manipulate the scripts and we could find out. We could mess around with that. That might be interesting. Let me know what you think. If that interests you, we can start like tinkering this. We could try and build a little game if we wanted. I don't know. I actually don't know what the rules are behind using this engine. Personal use to learn and explore. Don't try and decompile it. And Dolores' code in a custom language called Dinky is based on and inspired by Squirrel. Far from complete, hastily written, probably riddled with spelling mistakes. You've been warned. Your full art pipeline involves a slew of Python scripts that prove to be an installation nightmare, so not included. If you want to add art, place a PNG for the element in there and then run Munge images and the sprite sheets will be created. You need to have Texture Packer installed. Animation files can be found in animation. They're just JSON files. The tool that created these for Thimbleweed Park is long gone. I don't know why it'd be long gone, but all right. There's a bug in the garbage collection. It's a garbage collecting engine. That's interesting. So I turn it off. You'll notice memory usage climbing, but it's not likely to be an issue unless you're playing for hours and hours. Translation system is only half done. See translation helper Dinky for more information. Dolores was programmed by Ron Gilbert and David Fox. Thimbleweed Park art by Mark Ferrari. Yeah. This is really neat. And anyways, thank you for indulging me. If you want to read more, there's like a blog post where he did the announcement of the release of the source code for Dolores. There's more context there. Thank you for indulging me, because that's like a real one of the real roots of my interest in computing and programming is point and click adventure games. So thank you for watching as I dug into the source code of like something. It's almost like, I don't know. It's like going back to your roots of why you even got there, you know, and like that's what I'm doing, going back to my roots. And this is what got me interested in computing. So thank you for that. That's your gift to me, is indulging me. Hey, thank you so much for watching episode 310 of The Joy of Coding. I hope you had a relatively decent year. I hope you enjoyed the episode. The year's almost at a close. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I hope you enjoy it. And I'll see you in 2023. Take care of each other. You know, do everything you can with all the people you like, and have fun and be good. And I'll see you in the new year. Thanks, everybody. Take care. 2022 out. Bye-bye.
The joy of